Hello, friends. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Michelle Fondin, and I'm the author of the brand new book, The 8 Limbs of Yoga for Modern Times, a practical guide to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And welcome to this mini-series on the 8 limbs of yoga. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Thank you for subscribing to my channel below. Click on the bell, scroll up to all for all notifications, and thank you for giving the video a thumbs up. I teach meditation on demand. You'll get your personalized Vedic mantra based on your Vedic astrology, birth date, birth time, birthplace. You can sign up on demand at the link below. Welcome to this series. We're starting with the first limb of yoga and the first principle of the first limb of yoga. The first limb of yoga are the Yamas, and the first principle of the Yamas is Ahimsa, non-harming or non-violence, depending on how you translate it. We're going to start with a reading of 2 of the Yoga Sutras pertaining to this principle of non-harming, Ahimsa. When negative thoughts arise or when one feels compelled to commit acts of violence out of greed, anger, or delusion, and indulged with mild, moderate, or extreme intensity, they are based on ignorance and are sure to cause pain. At such times, think of their opposites. Yoga Sutra, chapter 2, verse 34. In the presence of one firmly established in nonviolence, all hostilities cease. Yoga Sutra, chapter 2, verse 35. Let's talk a little bit about this principle of ahimsa. As for me, I like the translation of non-harming better than non-violence. Now, of course, I am not for violence at all. I'm very much a pacifist. However, violence is sometimes necessary. When you think about cutting your grass, that's a violent act. When you think about killing animals for food, or even animals killing other animals for food, that is violence. I really like the principle of non-harming and that translation of non-harming a little bit better because it's easier to understand, easier to wrap your brain around and grasp. So let's talk about this principle of non-harming and what that means for your daily life, what that means on and off the yoga mat. When I think about violence or harming, what I think about is the opposite of love, because I believe that all violence comes out of fear. Fear-based violence is usually how things go. When you're rooted in unconditional love, when you're rooted in love, violence really has no place, or even harming really has no place. And so all violence, all harming comes from fear. And when we think about that, it's really easy to understand why there's so much violence in the world. It can really seem like there's so much unadulterated violence on planet Earth, and especially between humans, right? Especially between humans when you think about it. And it can make the world a really scary place. However, I believe that our concept of violence is a little bit misguided. We always think that violence really starts from something out there, some person out there, a group, a country, something outside of us. That is where the violence begins. And so we get caught up in our brains and we're like, I wish the violence would just stop. Why are people so mean to each other? Why do people start wars? And so on and so forth. Really, what the Vedic texts say is that violence comes from within. Harming or intent to harm comes from the inside. And it really starts with your thoughts. Thoughts toward yourself and thoughts toward others. And we're going to explore this a little bit. So let's start with yourself, because I think that's extremely important, because we're not so nice to ourselves most of the time, right? A lot of times we're very hard on ourselves. We have harsh words, even mentally harsh words toward ourselves. We have very high expectations, or expectations of perfection, that we hold these extreme standards, these impossible standards for ourselves. And when we don't exceed or even meet those expectations, or the idea of being perfect in some way, shape, or form. It could be in your body, in your work, with your children, with your spouse, whatever it happens to be. We have these ideas of how we should act, how we should be. And when we don't meet or exceed those expectations, we have violent thoughts generated toward ourselves. I'm unworthy, I'm a loser, I can't do things right, I'm so stupid, right? When we think about all the things that we say to ourselves with our self-talk, those are intent to harm. You might have never, ever in a million years thought of it like that. You might have never thought like, oh, if I say that I'm a loser, if I say that I'm stupid, or I made a mistake, but I'm really hard on myself, I never really conceived that that was harmful to myself or creating violence or intent to harm. But it really is intent to harm yourself, your self-esteem in the very least. And so it starts with your mental activity, right? What are you saying to yourself? How do you treat yourself? Do you treat yourself poorly? Are you the last person on your to-do list? If you are the last person day in and day out on your to-do list, then you have intent to harm yourself because you're not paying attention to your sleep, how you're eating, you're not paying attention to your body getting enough exercise, or maybe getting some rest and recreation, or rest and relaxation, or even having fun. So when we think about the thoughts that we generate toward ourselves and our negative self-talk, that would be countering the principle of Ahimsa, because whatever we say to ourselves on a constant basis, however we treat ourselves on a constant basis, it really filters down into how we end up treating others. And that really leads me to thoughts of harm generated toward others, which that first Yoga Sutra dealing with Ahimsa says. It really says that if there are any thoughts of violence, now we're going to whittle it down to harm, right? Because violence is something that we conceive of in the English language as something a lot more extreme. So just maybe thoughts of harm, like that person is stupid, or that person is dumb, or why don't they call me? They're such a bad person, or why aren't they texting me? They're a horrible person. So when we have thoughts of harm generated toward others, even if we're not acting upon it, right? That goes against the principles of Ahimsa. So when we really think about it, the violence within, or the harming within that we see in the outer world, it really starts with how each individual person is starting with their thoughts, right? There is a quote in the Upanishads is, as are your thoughts, so are your words. As are your words, so are your deeds. As are your deeds, so is your destiny. And really what that indicates is that everything starts with a thought. Everything starts with a thought. So when you have thoughts generated toward yourself or others that are harmful, rest assured, you're still in that realm of violence. You're still in that realm of harming. And again, this might be 100% foreign to you, because as a human being, you've mostly conceived of violence or harm being something outside of yourself, not something inside of yourself. So let's talk about harming in your words. Harming in your words. We already spoke about harming in your words towards yourself. We already spoke about that. We talked about harming in your words with a thought generated toward another without saying it out loud. But let's really talk about harming with words. How do we harm with words? How do we create violence, I'm gonna put that in quotes, with others through our words? Well, when you're criticizing another person, that certainly is harming through words. When you are sarcastic, or you're not direct with a person, or you're passive aggressive even with a person, that is harming through words, because the intent is to protect yourself, right? The intent is to maybe protect yourself, not be vulnerable, not be completely open with another person, but then your intent is to maybe make them feel bad or trying to get your point across, but saying, look, you're not treating me well, or I don't like the way you're being, but you're not saying it directly. So you're saying it indirectly, again, through something passive aggressive, through some sarcasm. And really that is intent to harm the other person, because instead of being vulnerable and open and being honest and upfront and saying, hey, what you're doing is not pleasing to me, or maybe I'm feeling insecure about the way you're acting and it's making me feel bad. So instead of being able to say that, you're doing something that is completely counter to that. And then of course there's the direct insult, right? There's the direct insult towards others and cutting somebody down, criticizing, saying mean things to another person, maybe out of anger, maybe because you're hurt. Maybe because you're not even thinking about it. You're in a fight with that other person and you're not even thinking about it, and you just spout off the first thing that comes to mind. There is a principle that I learned from my teacher, Dr. David Simon, and it's these 3 gateways to proper speech, and that is non-harming speech. So the first gateway is what I am about to say true? Is it true? Objectively true, right? So mulling it over in your mind and saying, is what I'm about to say objectively true? And if the answer is yes, then go ahead and let it pass through this to the second gateway. And the second gateway is what I am about to say necessary? Like, is it going to change the nature of the relationship? Is it going to change things? Is it absolutely necessary to say this? And if the answer is yes, then you pass through to the third gateway. And the third gateway to nonviolent speech is what I am about to say kind. And if it's not kind, then it's going to create or generate harm. And so that's where, it gets sticky, right? So it may be true, it may be necessary, but is it kind? And, if it's not kind, it may be necessary and you may need to say it anyway. But if it's really not kind and you know that it's not going to change the nature of anything, then maybe it's best not to say it. So that's redirecting your speech toward non-harming, toward Ahimsa. And finally, we're going to explore Ahimsa through actions. So our actions really truly do speak louder than words sometimes, right? We can say kind words to people. We can people please through our words, right? We can make someone think that we're the best person on the planet through our sickeningly sweet words, right? And we know a lot of people that do that, where they're saying all the right things, they're saying all the nice things, they're saying what you want to hear. But then when it comes to actions, that's where things really get mucked up, right? And so when you think about your actions, are your actions harming another in any way, shape, or form? Or are your actions harming yourself in any way, shape, or form? And when you think about certain actions that you take, or maybe actions that you don't take, such as eating properly for yourself, where you might be harming yourself by holing up in your room and eating Doritos and Pop-Tarts for 3 days in a row, right? That might not be the best choice to not harm your body. But when we think about our actions in any way, shape, or form going to harm another with intent to harm, even though that may be totally subconscious. So when we think about burying our nose in somebody else's business, for example, give you that as an example, making somebody else's business our own when it's none of our business, and then trying to do something about it, that really is causing harm through action. So it's really best in that case, let's just say that's the case, but it's really best in that case to just stay in your lane. Just stay in your lane. Let that other person figure it out. There's no need to take action for somebody else's life when it doesn't really concern you. And maybe it even does concern you, but it's about allowing that person to take action on their own life and not creating more harm by trying to take action on somebody else's life. Or even if you get cut off on the road, and I said this in another video, but traffic is a big deal here in Southern California. But even if you get cut off on the road and then your thoughts generate to, I'm going to cut that person off too. I'm going to speed up ahead and I'm going to cut them off. So are your actions creating more harm than non-harm? And it comes from that phrase, right? Treat others the way you want to be treated, the golden rule. But it's also two wrongs don't make a right, right? Two wrongs do not make a right. And I talk to people all day long about this particular principle that take the higher road, take the road to non-harming, take the higher road. Just because somebody does something to you does not mean you need to do the same thing in return. Treat others the way you would like to be treated and take the higher road to ahimsa, to nonviolence, to non-harming. Now, I find it really fascinating that Patanjali, again, we don't know if Patanjali was one person or a group of persons about 14 to 1500 years ago. We don't really know, but that Patanjali took these particular 8 limbs of yoga from the Vedic texts, notably the Rig Veda, and that the first principle of the first limb of yoga was non-harming. That's really fascinating to me because doctors take the Hippocratic oath, which is first do no harm. And I find that really fascinating that that is the first thing that shows up in the 8 limbs of yoga, because it's very hard to do, right? We live in societies, we live with other human beings, we live with animals, we live with the planet, we live with the environment. And when we think about self-discipline, when we think about living in harmony with our planet, when we think about living in harmony with other people, and that first principle is non-harming or non-violence, I believe that is one of the most difficult things to do. It's really difficult to be careful of what you're thinking and not have harmful thoughts generated towards yourself or others. It's also really difficult to not respond with harmful words if someone says a harmful word to you, right? And it's also really hard to not punch someone in the face if they punch you in the face first, right? So I really find it fascinating that for the disciplined yogi, the first principle is to harness this power of non-harming, to harness this power of non-violence. Now, if you want to learn more about the principle of ahimsa, you can always check it out in my book, The 8 Limbs of Yoga for Modern Times. And hey, I have a free cheat sheet, a free 9-page source guide for the 8 limbs of yoga. If you're a yogi, yoga teacher in training, and you can download it on my website for free, no money exchanged. And it's a 9-page cheat sheet taken directly from my book. So it is copywritten material, but you can download it for free and you can have that for your yoga course. If you're in yoga training, you can have it to share bits and pieces with your students while you're teaching. You can download that for free on my website below. I want to thank you so much for joining me here today. Thank you for subscribing to my channel below. Click on the bell, scroll up to all for all notifications, and thank you for giving the video a thumbs up. Thank you for sharing this with other yogis, yoga teachers in training, and thank you so much for your support of my YouTube channel. I've published 12 published books on the chakras, on Ayurveda, on healing. You can check those out on Amazon, and I will see you in the next video.